So, Family Hubs Network, where do we start? Well, let's start with a bit about us. We are the organisation led by Lord Farmer and Dr. Callan, who gathered the evidence of family hubs, which led to creating the policy. So we campaigned for the policy to be implemented, and now we support local authorities and other partners in delivering family hubs up and down the country. So I'm going to start by telling you the story. And I think the first thing to say is that Family Hubs is about looking at family problems in a slightly different way. For some reason, it's not clicking on. Why do these things always happen when you've got the record button on? I don't know. Oh, there we are. Right. So families. If we look at when children present with problems, often there are other factors at play. And we know that family-based problems hinder children's life chances. So on the left of the screen here, you've got the types of problems that families face. And on the right, you've got the poor life chances that children can face as a result. And Family Hubs is, in a nutshell, about trying to solve those problems. Family Hubs is a policy which is about providing an early help front door. We'll talk about early help as a strategy later, but it's about having that front door physically and systematically, which families can walk through to get help, so that we can stop problems getting worse and stop problems occurring at all by giving families the support they need early on. So where did the idea come from? I'm going to give you a quick potted history. Well, Family Hubs thinking really goes right back to 1949 when the welfare state was invented and child welfare centres were proposed, where it was seen that these would be like the sort of third leg of the welfare state, which would be about supporting families. Obviously, they weren't implemented then, but the thinking continued. And in the 1980s, we had an initiative called Family Centres, which did provide some support for families, but they were quite stigmatising. They were targeted at specific families that needed help. And as a result, though, it was difficult to get families to engage as they might. And then in the noughties, we had the launch of Sure Start Children's Centres, which obviously was a huge initiative and had a massive impact on raising the profile of the importance of the early years and providing families with much better support during that time period. And as Sure Start Children's Centres continued and expanded and their focus shifted a little bit over time, thinking was continuing. And in 2007, Family Hubs was mentioned in the Centre for Social Justice's Breakthrough Britain report. And then momentum gathered and gradually it really became to be seen as the future way in which Sure Start centres could go. And in fact, in Labour's manifesto in 2015, they talked about Family Hubs being the next step for children's centres. And then in 2016, a very significant APPG on children's centres report called Family Hubs, the Future of Children's Centres, was published. And a lot of people got to reading that, and it was those local authorities that really innovated with Family Hubs, really pioneered it. They, many of them were influenced by that report. And at that time, the Children's Commissioner endorsed Family Hubs, and she was, I think that was Anne Longfield's time, and she was obviously a big proponent of, supporter of children's centres. And she felt that also Family Hubs had great potential. And then in 2017, the manifesto Strengthen Families was produced by a group of MPs who came together talking about family policy and the importance of strengthen families to prevent problems for families. And by 2019, as we prepared for another election, this time the Conservatives had Family Hubs in their manifesto, and they promised to champion Family Hubs. Well, as you know, they went into government, and so in 2020 we spent time saying, right, how are you going to champion Family Hubs? What's this championing going to look like? And the funding was announced in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic and all the other chaos around us, and implementation began. So it's been a bit of a road, but obviously from 2020 onwards, we really have gathered momentum. And I want to, first of all, before we talk about how it's been implemented, just reflect on the fact that need has not changed. Post the pandemic, we had a lot of stats, and you can see here some examples from the Children's Commissioner, from health visitors, talking about the mental health problems that parents faced during the pandemic and the impact that had on children and their development. We had a talk of anxiety and depression. We saw the impact on school readiness. We saw increasing numbers of persistent absence. And we had, a stark figure of 1 in 6 7 to 16-year-olds struggling with their mental health. So evidently, need did not go down in the pandemic. We all know it went up, and we needed something that would address that problem. The Children's Commissioner, Rachel de Souza, did a family review, which you may be familiar with. And in part 1, she identified or explored the post-pandemic need and talked about what families needed. And what was interesting was that the solutions the solutions families were looking for fitted really well with what Family Hubs was about to offer. Something that's services are easy to find, available when families need them, without the fear of judgment. They want something welcoming, caring, and genuine help. They want to services and providers to recognise that families are embedded in wider networks of support, and we should work with those networks. And let's always consider the importance of family. It's a protective factor, and we need to ensure that families are equipped to be resilient and to look after each other so that children have better futures. So the need was there, and in the family review, the Commissioner then went on to look at solutions, and she said herself, we want to see a family hub within each neighbourhood. And interestingly, she put out certain characteristics here: the importance of the voluntary sector and community groups, the fact that family hubs would be something that supported the whole course of childhood, not just the early years, the importance of making sure that families are aware of family hubs and know how to access them and can access them, the importance of relationships, and the ability to hold and utilise data so that they can integrate services and support families locally. So some really interesting themes coming through there more recently. So although the policy has been around developing over time, very much post-pandemic, the need and its appropriateness as a solution was bang up to date. So what is the policy? Well, firstly, it's not something pie in the sky. It is a grassroots movement reflecting 3 decades of learning. So local authorities and the voluntary sector have been developing the way they work, which has led to Family Hubs policy today. And there are 2 important cornerstones which can get forgotten, but are important to remember that they are drivers of this policy. One, the recognition that parental conflict has a negative impact on children, and how we must work harder to help families address parental conflict, to normalise it for them, but to help them reduce it happening in their own homes. And this is an important tie-in with reducing parental conflict. And I say that very specifically, though, we're not talking about domestic abuse here, which is a very different category indeed. It's also about recognising that this country has high levels of family breakdown, and if we can support families better, we can reduce levels of family breakdown. So, as I said, Family Hubs became government policy in 2020. Funding was announced in 2020 and going into 2021, and momentum has been growing as over half the local authorities in this country have been, in England, I should say, have been implementing Family Hubs, but others that aren't receiving funding are also doing it too. And the key thing is that Family Hubs is about building on what was best about Sure Start Children's Centres. It's been a difficult time when funding hasn't been there for children's centres, but we are now in a place of investment what's more, and we are building on the best of Sure Start, but adding a lot more in there too, which I will come to. So what is it about Family Hubs? What does it look like? Well, one of the confusing things is that Family Hubs look different in different places. And that's because of the basic pillars that in any local authority area, a family hub approach focuses on meeting local need, understanding what families in that local authority need help with, building on existing infrastructure, partly from a budget-friendly point of view, but also because families are much happier to go to places where they already trust people. So building into that network of support and infrastructure where connections with other settings where families trust and are happy to go. And through this approach, designing a programme which achieves both national and local objectives. And when it works very well. At the bottom of the slide there, you can see that in the Isle of Wight, every £1 invested in intensive family support through family hubs has saved £2.60 in the long term. So it is a cost-effective route, which is why some local authorities are doing it, even though they're not getting additional funding. So what are the basic principles? Well, we spent a lot of time gathering this evidence, as I mentioned earlier, and we have identified 9 principles. Now, the Department for Education looked at our 9 principles and built their own approach and their policy from it. And they identified 3 overarching principles, which I think are really helpful. It's about access, connection, and relationship. So let's unpack that a bit. First of all, this is the key bit referring to children's centres, of course. We all know it has been proven that early years services are absolutely essential, especially for child development and for engaging with families, especially those that struggle early in their journey. If you can build those relationships from day one, as soon as baby is born, then there is a far better chance of helping that family support and get stronger through the life course of childhood. So Family Hubs is about building firstly on a foundation of early years services, but it's also about prioritising early help strategies. Now, every local authority has an early help strategy, but not all local authorities build their early help in a way that early help is everybody's business. And when early help is the backbone of a family hub approach, it is a way of saying, this is our early help strategy. Everybody in our network supporting families in this area is part of our early help strategy. So it is a very active way ensuring that all partners locally are connecting into that strategy and delivering through it. And then we take the 3 pillars. So we've got access, first of all. So a family hub approach is about ensuring that all families with children 0 to 19 and up to 25 with special educational needs and disabilities, they can all access help through this system. Now, that doesn't mean they have to approach it in the same way, but it means there's one system. They can all access it. The family hubs are there as main access points, and it makes it a lot easier for families because they know that there's one place to go. There's one system. Whereas how it used to be with early years and children's centres supporting families until they went to school, there was that drop-off point, and that was a shame because the relationship that families had formed with the children's centres was so important and beneficial. And actually, we've visited children's centres where families have stayed engaged for the long run, and that's what a family hub is where families that need that ongoing help don't need to go elsewhere. They can continue to receive that support. But it is a universal offer. So it's not just about pinpointing families that need help. It's about saying to any family, you are welcome to come to us and ask for advice or support, and we will respond appropriately to your level of need. And this is much better in terms of prevention because it means that families who might just have the beginnings of a problem get help quickly. They haven't had to meet a threshold in order to get that support. And of course, there are lots of different sorts of support available, not all statutory, which is where connection comes in. So connection is about an integrated way of working with partnership at the centre of it. So when I say integrated, I'm talking about a multi-agency, multidiscipline approach to assessing families' problems. I'm talking about a willingness to share data and work together to achieve shared outcomes. And it's about establishing partnership across public, voluntary and private sectors and not working in silos. Now, I know you're probably thinking, well, we've been trying to do that forever and a day, but it is absolutely key. And I think the ways in which family hubs are implemented is really key to ensuring the success of that. We can talk about more about that later. but ensuring that the voluntary sector is involved. There can be tensions, can't there, about, well, we can't afford to commission the voluntary sector, we haven't got funding, they won't work with us if we're not providing that funding. But actually there are other ways to work in partnership together and to help apply for funding together as well. And as well as working across those different sectors, using health and education as well, by the way, so that everybody is working together to achieve an easy to navigate system. It's about a system that is embedded in the local community, which has been co-designed with the local community and is felt to be owned by the local community. It's not doing unto the families, it's about families and the community working together. And relationships are really centre of this. A family hub approach is about always taking a whole family approach, not just in professionals, practitioners doing it in their consultations with families, but everybody thinking about the whole family context, about involving dad, about understanding the realities of who's at home and how different issues are impacting on other people in the family, about looking at housing, looking at benefits, unemployment, making sure we're thinking about that bigger picture and helping with those problems in the right order. It's about a relational culture where the way we treat families and the way we work together is in a relationally positive way. And particularly those people at the front desk in a family hub need to have great relational skills to get those conversations with people going with people who cross the threshold, to ask the right questions, be listening for the right information and making good judgments about how to support the person who's in front of them and really encouraging them to engage with the help that you want to offer. And relationship support is an important thing too. As I'm referring to reducing parental conflict just now, we know that it can be really difficult to address couple relationship challenges in particular. Parenting support, we know about, looking at parent-child dynamics, we know about. Interfering in couple relationships can be really difficult, but family hubs is an approach where we don't shy away from that. We've got reducing parental conflict work at the heart of it, and we're looking very much at making sure that frontline practitioners feel equipped and empowered, and that it is their business to ask about relationships in the right way and to help families and help couples when this is a challenge, whether they're together or whether they're co-parenting. So what does a family hub network approach look like on the ground? Well, it involves using different settings in the community, and every local authority area will look different. But what we're seeing mostly at this early stage in implementation is that children's centres are most commonly becoming the family hubs. That means that they are open for extensive opening hours, that there is someone they can get, there are people they can talk to and get help when they're there, that there is a good email address that gets responded to, there's a phone that gets answered, messages that gets returned. There is a real sense that this is a place where you can walk in, you can contact them, and they will be ready to help. But the hub is just the entry point. It's connecting up with lots of other settings in a neighbourhood. And it may well be that the actual help a family needs is actually available in a different setting. It's not about having all the services in one place. And it also means that by connecting up with other settings, if families are going into those other settings and ask for help, those settings are equally well prepared to help that family engage with the family hub and get the support that they need. And as I say, it doesn't have to be the children's centre that is the family hub. There are some places down in Somerset, there's a church, which is the family hub where families go in and get access to a whole range of services. There can also be schools that run family hubs, such as the Reach Academy in Feltham in South West London. There can be voluntary sector run hubs, such as Ferry's family groups up on the Wirral, where they create that access to a wide range of support. And of course, we are also seeing connection in with youth settings, health settings, and libraries, leisure centres. Interesting, a lot of local authorities in their implementation of family hubs are drawing on leisure centres, but particularly libraries, knowing that they are places where families think of to get information, knowing that libraries already deliver quite a few activities for the early years and older children, and looking at the potential as to how libraries and other settings in a neighbourhood can work together to provide families with the support they need. And behind this, joined up by a dotted line, is online connection and information for families and professionals. This could be a whole webinar topic in itself, but suffice to say, post-pandemic particularly, we have learned the importance of the digital world. And so in terms of families being able to access information, we're looking for websites, or some local authorities have apps where the locally available advice and support is presented, so you can easily see what's available. And also in terms of how things are delivered, we're seeing more parenting programs delivered by Zoom, for example, in the evening, or consultations, conversations with professionals carried out over WhatsApp, taking a more flexible way to helping families engage with support. Right, so moving on. How does this actually look in terms of what the Department for Education is doing now? So the Department for Education and Department of Health and Social Care have worked together to really give a great push to family hubs. We've had Transformation Fund 1, which was launched first, which was £12 million shared between about 12 local authorities, that you can see the successful names there. And their funding was very much about the transformation process. And we've also had an Innovation Evaluation Fund, which was 400,000, which was spread across 5 local authorities to help them evaluate what they were doing in terms of a family hub model and to work out how well that was working. And then we've also had the Digital Growing Up Well project, which has been specifically looking at digital support, helping voluntary sector and local authority and all providers in the local community share information, and another project looking at a golden record, where children's individual record where information can be shared. So these are all smaller projects. So we had these going on. We have the pioneers up in the right hand corner there, which we mustn't forget, because they've been doing this for over 5 years now. So they are an important part of the evidence of what works. And then we had the big splash of Transformation Fund 2, where 75 local authorities got a lot of funding to provide, in particular, a Family Hubs Start for Life programme. So the services that were funded were particularly for the 0 to 2s. And there were 14 trailblazers announced who are going above and beyond everybody else to sort of find the way. Here is a summary of all the local authorities that got the Transformation Fund 2 funding. Excuse me. So, Department for Education has delivered, implemented this policy with those 3 pillars, expecting all local authorities to deliver the following 24 services, with the 4 in bold here for the 0 to 2s in particular, with specific funding. How they implemented it was very much in a way that reflected the principles that I've just explained. So I'm not going to go over this now, but I want you to be able to see the consistency. So you can see the objective here is for Join Up, about using family hubs, about ensuring families get access to support when they need it. It's about providing support, reducing inequalities, and building an evidence base of what works. And this will be achieved through investing, transforming the way services are designed and delivered, making sure it's a universal Start for Life service, tailoring support to vulnerable communities, ensuring the workforce has got the capacity and capability to deliver this, and understanding what works going forward. So it is a long-term plan, even if the immediate funding is for just 3 years. And from the Department for Education's point of view, they summarise what they would be wanting to see between each of the pillars of access, connection, and relationships. So again, you can see the consistency, plus some additional things talking about governance and systems, etc. So where are we now? Well, we're well into that funding period, and it is hoped that all 75 local authorities, or sorry, 88 local authorities that have received funding will have opened at least 1 family hub by the end of next year. And what you've got here is the map where we count where family hubs are open. Now, our map isn't fully up to date because we can't keep a pace, and we are in part reliant upon local authorities telling us when they've opened family hubs. So that's got a lot there, but not all of them. There is a real momentum out there. And it's interesting as well to see what the non-funded local authorities are also doing. And there is a real drive to progress the implementation locally and centrally. It's important to point out this is one of the few areas of policy where government departments are working together widely. That's been recognised in various reports. I think it's a really important thing to bear in mind. So it's family hubs are everybody's business. And I think to bring us to the end of this, I want to just stress what we see is needed to create that system of partnership and integrated working. You need knowledge. You need knowledge that's shared so that people know what's going on around them. You need really good partnership, a willingness, a culture of partnership working. You need good governance so that there is a systematic approach to ensuring that what one's hoping to do gets done and is working. There is a real need to work in trust, to communicate well, and to do this, to create the ultimate shape to the system, you need to have data sharing agreements, and you need to be working towards shared outcomes and have an outcomes framework which reflects what you're trying to do. If we can focus on outcomes, we can be less focused on the how-to, the process. We can free up frontline workers to find the solutions that work to help families get the help they need. So we now help local authorities through talking to them, and we offer consultancy. So we deliver consultations when local authorities are looking at changing the use for their children's centres. We deliver stakeholder engagement workshops to help local authorities vision cast, build the network, and equip their teams to really get buy-in and to understand everyone's part in it. And we also do a temperature check where we spend a day with local authorities and their partners and actually discuss with them where they're at and help them reflect, and then provide some analysis and a report on what we see the next steps needing to be. So that is what we do. I hope that's been useful, and perhaps now we can see if there are some questions. Sophie's just asked me to check if anyone's waiting. Because I'm the only person who can let you in. Gosh. I don't think so. Okay, great. So does anyone want to put their cameras on? You don't have to actually, or do you want to ask a question, anyone? Maybe one in the chat. So going over to the chat. Great. So Nicholas says, is there a way as a national charity we can share or cascade our support services to the Family Hubs network to signpost families without having to contact everyone individually as we do with the local offers? It's a very good point. Through what we are doing, we by gathering all the details of the family hubs that are out there, we are doing our best to gather family hub information, but our information is really aimed at professionals rather than at families. We don't have the capacity to deliver that. I know that when the policy was first being implemented, we talk about having a sort of a national place to provide that. I think what we have, the best thing I can say, Nicola, is that the National Centre for Family Hubs, run by the Anna Freud Centre, has the contract for helping all local authorities implement family hub policy. So I would say that they would be the best people to talk to about cascading that kind of information at the moment. Is that helpful?
I've tried that route and that didn't work.
What were you told? What was the outcome of that?
Saying that, it was probably a year ago. Just trying to, because they're now grouped, aren't they, into sort of 2 hubs in each region, and I wondered, I think that's just been launched today, so I wonder whether it's possible to do it through contacting 18 is better than contacting 150 plus. and then trying to keep that information up to date. But it could be, if you've got a way of contacting professionals, we've got a professionals offer. By them seeing that, they will see what we can offer families. So that might be one route we could try, and
Yes.
happily try it as a tester and just see if that helps get the message out there.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. When you talked about the what was announced today, I'm going to ask you about that in a sec. But what came to mind for me was the fact that there are also the 9 regional groups who meet regularly to support each other. In fact, I was just chatting with someone about that this morning, and some of those regional groups are really, really active, and I think others have struggled a little bit to get off the ground. But if they get a little bit more support, that will be a much easier way to cascade information. So what's the announcement today that you're referring to?
Oh, bear with me. It was called Stronger Hubs. I think it was through the council. Bear with me. For disabled children, announced a website where there are 18 hubs on, 2 in each region. I can send you the email link to it.
Yeah,
I can do that after.
well, I'm afraid, yeah, you're ahead of me there.
Is it the Stronger Practice Hubs?
Yes, that's it. Early years.
Yeah,
Stronger Practice. That is completely separate.
National Children's Bureau and
That's
regional delivery of the Stronger Practice Hubs to strengthen early years practitioners' skills and capabilities for the early years workforce, really. So they're emerging. Do you want a link to the area of the internet that they're on?
That would be fabulous.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Nicola.
No worries.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
We must look into that. Thank you. So looking on to Nicola's question, Nicola dos Santos, who was talking, wasn't it? What are your thoughts on sustaining delivery throughout increasing economic challenges in local authorities? Well, the first thought is that those people who pioneered family hubs, they were actually doing it in order to save money. They weren't given money. They were doing it to save money. And they don't shout about that because they know it would be very unwise to talk about that too loudly, because they want to be given more funding, not less. But one of the reasons why family hubs works is because of the efficiencies of working together differently. And I think there isn't a one size fits all solution here, but it is about looking at the different funding pots and using them differently. So when we work with local authorities, one of the things we do is say, right, let's look at the various funding pots you've got and let's see how we can be more flexible with them. And it's about being quite canny. And it's also about connecting family hub strategy with your local vision. So, all local authorities have their strategic visions. And if you can take your family hub approach and tie it in with other local strategies and help the directorate see how family hubs will deliver to other ambitions, and help other people more widely within the local authority area understand how family hubs is underpinning a lot of other objectives, you will find that you will win friends and influence people. Do you want to comment on that, Nicola?
No, I think that's, I'm absolutely with you. And agree with you, and that genuine co-production at the start is so essential to understand the community. So but I've been having conversations with local officers and delivering communities of practice alongside OHID regional leads, and there was a little bit of a discussion around what's going to happen when the funding runs out and where do we go. So that's but absolutely agree with the benefits of that very early intervention and that support and empowerment to build in confidence with families and to prevent those more costly problems later on in that fix. So thank you, that was really helpful. Good
Good.
persuasive argument.
No, that's good. And I think, the other thing we notice is that in terms of obviously there's a lot of emphasis with the current funding to get services out there and delivered, and of course that's taken up a huge amount of energy, and recruitment hasn't been easy. And although that was really, really valuable, it's also stolen energy from that bigger system change, culture change. And actually, that's something that can only happen over time. And I think that actually now is when the real work begins. Really, have you got a stakeholder engagement workshop planned with your wider partners? Do you know how you're going to run that? How are you going to express your vision? How are you going to get people in that meeting to commit and sign up? So it's not just a happy day, it's actually people coming together going, yeah, count me in. And how are you going to help people understand the system so that they can explain it to families? It's about it's not about local authorities holding all the information, it's about them sharing it with others. And I think promotion and communication are hugely challenging, and those local authorities that have got a really good handle on social media and through being more nimble and more flexible in communicating what they're doing and how, puts them in a good place. I suppose a lot of local authorities get stuck on thinking, well, we've got to communicate this way, but we've got to get 25 people to sign off the web page, and that's just so frustrating. And it needs to be something slightly more fluid and dynamic, where you gradually build it so that people buy in.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to ask a question?
Catherine, I do. Thank you for that presentation. So I just want to explore how I'm working as a family navigator in one of the Lewisham hubs, 12 weeks into the role. So we need to capture data for commissioners, and it's capturing the work that I'm doing. So, for example, I'm working with a family. It might be just giving them instant information. For example, they want to register their child with a school. So that's an easy, straightforward. So I just want to know how people are actually capturing the work that they're doing with families. So if it might be a long term, it might be 4 weeks, over 4 weeks, but it could be something that's instantaneously. If that makes sense.
Yeah. What we are finding is that a lot of local authorities are finding it quite challenging dealing with the management information that they have to provide because of the funding, but also wanting to collect information which is really showing the benefits of what they are doing. And I think I'm going to speak in general terms here. What I see is local authorities making an effort to make it easy to gather information, but collecting every teeny weeny bit of intervention. So even if it's quite a quick win from your point of view, I'm just advising them on how to register for schools, counting that, because that may be the tiny intervention that makes all the difference. And we need to be able to see that from that point, that family didn't need further support because you got them in the right place, and it worked forward from there. So I think one of the key things is counting the little things, but also creating a system which is really, really easy. And that depends what systems you still have, and that varies enormously from one local authority to another. So that's a very broad answer. I could talk to you more specifically on a one-to-one if we were talking through your various systems later. But perhaps anyone else in the chat wants to share their thoughts on that, or whether you'd like to come back on that. Is it?
Catherine, it is, because we have to remember that as a local authority, we're providing universal and universal plus services. So therefore it can be a quick turnaround, but I think there's an issue there at the moment. But I am doing exactly what you're saying, and we don't have any electronic systems in place, or paper ones. So it's just going an Excel spreadsheet of date, parent's name, child's name, what was the action, what was the follow-up. So at the moment, that has to work for us. Because like you say, and I absolutely agree, it is a quick turnaround, because we're not providing long-term intervention, because then that would be stepped up to another service, for example.
Exactly.
And I think the local authorities need to be mindful of that.
Yeah, yes, because if you don't count the little interventions, you can't prove what the benefits of what you're doing.
Yeah, on the next steps. Yeah,
The next steps.
absolutely. No.
Yeah, I mean, I know Doncaster, for example, were really focused on this, gathering all evidence, but also I don't know if you've got in Lewisham, if you've got a membership system for your hub. So in Doncaster, all hubs, all babies are automatically a member of their local family hub, which makes it very easy to then record what's being done for each child or each family through that reference.
Thank you.
I'm very aware of the time. It's 1:51. I know we've sort of overrun a bit because we had our later start. Does anybody else want to ask any more questions, or should we call it a day? Let you all get back to work, get into the swing of the afternoon. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for your time. It's been lovely meeting you today, and do please feel free to get in touch afterwards with further questions, and we can arrange a one-to-one or see what else we can do. It's been lovely to have a good mix of you here today from local authorities and the voluntary sectors. So thank you very, very much for your time, and look forward to speaking to you another time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you. Thanks so much.